Hi, and welcome to Little Bighorn Treasure Hunting Sources 13. Today I'm going to show you a specific type of stone, and this stone comes out of the Wind River country. They're near the Shoshone Reservation, and the first piece here, it belonged to a Cheyenne named Big Woman, and she had, her husband was Soldier Wolf, and Soldier Wolf was written about in Custer's Fall on page 138 and 139, and it says, the envelopment of Custer's command was now complete. Having brought the soldiers to a standstill, the Indians held back from further mass-mounted charges, which might well prove costly to themselves, and settled down to long-range sniping at the contained foe. Getting off their ponies, many warriors carefully worked their way up on foot up the gullies and ravines, taking full advantage of every twig of available cover. By simple attrition, they began to thin out the ranks of the soldiers. Only a daring few of the Indians continued to fight on horseback. Soldier Wolf, a Cheyenne, stayed mounted through most of the fight. Among his own tribesmen, his daring was unsurpassed. Fighting the troopers nearest the crest of the ridge, Soldier Wolf rode straight at a soldier who aimed a carbine at the Cheyenne and would have shot him dead had the weapon not failed to discharge. Seeing the trooper was having mechanical difficulty with the carbine, Soldier Wolf simply rode him down. Wheeling his horse, the warrior charged the same soldier again. By this time, the man had regained his feet and was trying desperately to fire his gun. The trigger merely snapped, a faint click in all of the uproar. Now Soldier Wolf levered his own gun at the soldier and fired, killing at last an enemy he had given ample opportunity to kill him. Next, we'll come over here, and that piece, I've showed this before, it has the word Bull on it, and it belonged to Bull the Blackfeet. And you see the stone once again black, and when I saw the stone, that's why I decided to purchase this. And I had learned about this at the Colorado show from Wendell, the type of stone, because he had a crusher to make base for a project of his, and he said it was so hard that it tore the heck out of his crusher, so he knew exactly where this stone came from. And like I said, it was out of the Wind River Agency. Now Bull, he was born in 1824 and became a great warrior and joined the John Grass band of Sihaspapa Blackfeet. He later surrendered, but he was and fought at the Little Bighorn. Next, we'll come over here, and this is the same stone. White Buffalo was the man who had this with a special locking device I showed in the previous video, and it's pretty unique with that, and good hand the gunsmith made it. Next, we'll go over here, and this is Eagle Elk. And Eagle Elk was one of the 34 who rode with Crazy Horse at the Little Bighorn. He was an Oglala Sioux. And the report on him says, during my examination of the Stone War Club, I discovered the name Eagle Elk written 3 times in the language of Togia on the top of the club, along with the following message: rode with Crazy Horse, cousin. This information is shown on illustration 1. On the left side and right sides of the Stone Club, I found the same Togia message: Eagle Elk rode Crazy Horse, cousin. And here's a picture in 1944 of Eagle Elk, and he was written about in the book of Custer's Fall, and on page 109 and 110 it says, striped, his face carefully painted, mounted on his fastest war pony, a fine roan with a crooked white patch over its left eye, Eagle Elk rode into the fray. The Oglala warrior carried a Winchester repeater that was almost new. Striking out right and left, he knocked soldier after soldier from their saddles. It was as easy as killing buffalo cows. He saw one Sioux wielding a heavy saber captured from one of the Gray Fox's troops during the Little Bighorn fight. That was 8 days previous to the Little Bighorn. It was probably the only saber at the Little Bighorn, since none of Custer's 7th carried sabers in this campaign. Sometimes a soldier and an Indian would wrestle each other, each trying to dismount the others, like the old Sioux game of throwing them off their horses. With much practice, the warriors had every advantage. Even in the water, they kept it up. Occasionally, the fighting Indian and soldiers would go underwater, then bubble to the surface, finally to go under again. Eagle Elk killed 2 or 3 soldiers who were trying to get across the river. His was one of the better guns, and he used it with telling effect. He stayed out of the water, however, for he was looking for his Minneconjou brother friend, High Horse. Glancing around, he saw an Arikara scout trying to get through the river. This may have been Stabbed, who was already been wounded in the timber. A Sioux jumped from his horse onto this Arikara. He had a long knife ready, and when he stood again, it was covered with blood all the way up the blade. Eagle Elk then saw the Sioux was High Horse. He was breathing hard and talking crazy. "I cut off his neck," he kept saying. "I cut off the neck of that Arikara cur." Suddenly, a large party of Cheyenne galloped up, chasing a big cavalry horse towards High Horse. The Minneconjou reached out and caught the bridle and leaped into the saddle. Downstream near the timber, Indians were setting brush afire to drive out soldiers hiding there. Racing back that way, Eagle Elk and High Horse saw some Sioux boys shooting arrows at a soldier who dodged around in the burning brush. He seemed to have lost his gun and was trying to keep it from being caught in flames. And then, if you go to page 145 and 146, it says, low on the western slope of the ridge, a handful of soldiers fighting on foot held out in a shallow ravine. Past them swept a turmoil of mounted Indians and stampeding cavalry horses. Though the afternoon sun was bright, the valley seemed dark as evening from dust and gun smoke. These soldiers presented a solid phalanx against frontal attack, and Indian sharpshooters could not see them well enough to pick them off. Eagle Elk and his brother friend High Horse rode up on the ravine without warning. It was not the best place to choose for a fight, but neither soldier was inclined to turn back. Eagle Elk lashed out with his quirt at High Horse's pony and shouted, "It's a good day to die. Brave up, brother. Hookah-hay." And the 2 brother friends charged straight in. Riding with his knees, Eagle Elk clubbed his rifle and struck at the soldiers with his gun butt. High Horse was slashing right and left with his long knife. With aimed carbines, 2 soldiers rushed out at them. Then, when the warriors were almost on top of them, they fired straight up in the air and went down under the Indian ponies' flying hooves. Just then, 3 mounted soldiers rode in on the warriors' flank. As his pony reared and wheeled, Eagle Elk struck out one of the troopers with his gun butt, knocking him off his saddle. The trooper's gun flew out of his hands. High Horse leaped onto another soldier with his knife ready. A shot was fired at point-blank range. The 3rd soldier had fired, but had already gone down in the dust. High Horse and his antagonists were struggling on the ground, rolling around in the dust. Eagle Elk jumped down from his horse and tried to hold him quiet, but the animal reared and jerked on the reins, pulling his owner back. By the time Eagle Elk got back to High Horse, his brother friend's knife was across the soldier's throat, and blood was pumping from the soldier's jugular vein. Eagle Elk pulled High Horse away, but then he suddenly gone limp. Blood came out of his wounds in his back and chest. He was dead. Eagle Elk's pony jerked away from the smell of death. Eagle Elk carried High Horse's lifeless body on his back and took it to a hill apart from the field of battle. There Eagle Elk wept freely in his sorrow. Then a fierce anger swept over him. He only wanted to kill many soldiers, then die. "My brother," he cried, "look back as you go. I am following. Look back and wait for me, for I'll be coming." Running back into the fight, Eagle Elk saw 4 cavalry horses tied together in 4s by their reins, running in a tight circle and rearing and yanking at each other. After getting one loose, Eagle Elk mounted and dashed into the dust that told him where the fighting was thickest. He looked now for soldiers to kill, wanting to kill them. Cavalry horses were breaking away from their soldiers and other warriors were chasing after them. But Eagle Elk wanted no horses now. He only wanted killing. Time after time, he rode into the shrinking knot of soldiers, flailing out with his gun butt until none were left standing. He had little idea how many he may have killed, but even that mattered but little as long as he was killing. So that ends the story, and there's more about Eagle Elk in the book Custer's Fall. Well, I hope you enjoyed this, and remember, look for that black stone. God bless. We'll do another one.